Black people can buy a home anywhere in the US, right? Well, not exactly. You see, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's easy or even realistic. There are states where black homeownership is practically a mission impossible, thanks to a maze of systemic racism, discriminatory lending practices, and housing market policies that might as well have a no-entry sign for black buyers. Now, let's be real. It's not like there's a big neon billboard that says black people can't buy here. At least, not anymore. But when mortgage denials for black applicants are nearly 80% higher than for white applicants in some places, and homeownership gaps are worse today than they were in the 1960s, it's clear that something isn't right. From economic disparity to exclusionary real estate practices, we're diving deep into the hidden housing barriers that continue to lock black Americans out of the American dream. So which states are making it hardest for black people to buy a home? Stick around because you won't believe which ones made the list. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more eye-opening insights. Drop a comment if you or someone you know faced home buying challenges. Let's get into it. Number 10. Mississippi. So Mississippi has one of the highest black populations in the country. Yet black people still struggle to buy homes here? Make it make sense. You'd think in a state where black residents make up nearly 40% of the population, homeownership would be thriving. But nope. Mississippi is out here playing the worst kind of monopoly, where black folks never pass through go, and definitely don't collect home equity. The black homeownership rate in Mississippi is well below the national average. And one of the biggest culprits? Banks still acting like it's 1962. Black mortgage applicants here are nearly twice as likely to get denied for a loan compared to their white counterparts, with similar credit scores, incomes, and financial profiles. What's that about? Ghosts of Jim Crow working in the finance department? Mississippi proudly holds one of the worst racial wage gaps in America. The average black worker here earns about 27% less than the average white worker. Now imagine trying to save for a down payment when your paycheck is auditioning for the role of disappearing act every month. Add in sky-high property insurance costs because Mississippi loves a good hurricane, and you start to see why black homeownership in this state is just a dream for many, not a reality. So tell me, how does a state with one of the highest black populations still make it nearly impossible for black people to own homes? Mississippi, you got some explaining to do. Number 9. Louisiana. Black people can cook up a world-famous gumbo in Louisiana, but when it comes to buying a home, the market is serving them straight-up scraps. Let's start with Hurricane Katrina, which didn't just flood homes, it washed away black homeownership in New Orleans like it was a bad memory. Pre-Katrina, many black families owned their homes outright, passed down through generations. But when the storm hit, thousands of black homeowners were displaced. And guess what? Most never returned. Between FEMA red tape, skyrocketing insurance costs, and predatory rebuilding loans, black neighborhoods were left looking like ghost towns while wealthier and whiter areas bounced back. And speaking of insurance, let's talk flood zones. If you're black and trying to buy a home in Louisiana, chances are you'll be stuck in an area where home insurance costs more than your actual mortgage. The way these companies hike up rates in black-majority areas, you'd think hurricanes were only interested in destroying black wealth. Coincidence? Yeah, sure. Now, for the real kicker, predatory lending. Black buyers in Louisiana were aggressively pushed into subprime loans with sky-high interest rates before the 2008 crash. And here's the thing. Many are still struggling to recover. While white homeowners refinanced and regained stability, many black families either lost their homes or are still drowning in unfair mortgage terms. Oh, and let's not forget the racial wealth gap. Louisiana has one of the highest poverty rates in the country, and when black workers make significantly less than their white counterparts, saving up for a down payment feels about as easy as catching a live alligator with your bare hands. How does a state so rich in black culture, history, and resilience make it this hard for black people to buy a home? Louisiana, we need answers. Number 8. Indiana. Buying a home in Indiana while black? You might have better luck scoring front row seats to the NBA Finals for free. In Indianapolis, the black-white homeownership gap is so wide you could drive a whole Indy 500 race through it. Only 35% of black residents own homes here, compared to nearly 70% of white residents. That's right, if you're black and trying to buy a house in Indiana, the odds are stacked against you like a game of rigged Jenga. Why? Historic redlining is alive and kicking. You'd think something outlawed decades ago wouldn't still be causing problems, but here we are. Many black-majority neighborhoods were deliberately neglected when it came to loans, appraisals, and investment. And guess what? That legacy is still holding back black homeownership today. If you buy a home in one of these areas, expect a low appraisal, because banks still act like a 3-bedroom house in a black neighborhood is worth the price of a used Honda. And if that wasn't bad enough, Indiana's real estate policies seem to be written by landlords for landlords. Recent laws have made it easier for investors to buy up affordable housing, which means fewer chances for black families to purchase homes. Think about it. How are you supposed to compete for a house when big investors are swooping in with cash offers like they're on a shopping spree? Why is it that in a state famous for basketball, black people still have to jump through hoops to own a home? Number 7. Missouri. Missouri has some of the worst homeownership rates for black people in the country. No, seriously, if you're black and trying to buy a house here, you might as well be trying to get a front-row ticket to the Super Bowl with Monopoly money. St. Louis has a black population of nearly 50%, but the black homeownership rate? Barely 30%. What's up with that? It's almost like the game is rigged, and spoiler alert, it is. First, there is discriminatory appraisal practices. Black homeowners in Missouri have been hit with some of the worst lowball appraisals in the country. Picture this. A black family gets their home appraised, and it comes back tens of thousands of dollars lower than identical homes in white neighborhoods. But wait, when a white friend pretends to be the owner for a second appraisal, boom, the value magically jumps up. Coincidence? Yeah, right. And then, of course, there is predatory lending. Even when black applicants have good credit, steady jobs, and solid financial profiles, they're still handed higher interest rates and stricter loan conditions than white buyers. It's like walking into a car dealership, asking for a Toyota, and getting offered a broken-down bicycle for the same price. How does a state where black people make up a huge part of the population still treat black homeownership like an impossible dream? Number 6. Nebraska. Nebraska, land of corn, college football, and some of the most stubborn racial housing barriers in America. If you're black and trying to buy a home here, you might feel like you're in a game of musical chairs where the music stops, but all the seats are already taken. Let's talk about Omaha, a city with a history of literally pushing black residents out of certain neighborhoods. Back in the day, black families were forced to relocate through government-backed segregation efforts. And surprise, surprise, the housing market today still reflects that ugly history. Fast forward to 2024, and black homeownership in Omaha is lower than ever. And just when you think things couldn't get worse, here comes gentrification. North Omaha, one of the city's historically black neighborhoods, is now seeing property values skyrocket faster than a lottery winner's bank account. But here's the kicker. Longtime black residents aren't benefiting from the rising home values. They're getting priced out. Wealthy investors and developers are moving in, flipping houses, and driving up taxes, leaving black homeowners struggling to keep up. And let's not forget about first-time homebuyer assistance, or the lack of it. Nebraska loves to brag about its state-run homeownership programs, but guess what? The income caps don't match reality. Black residents, who already face wage disparities, often don't qualify for the help they actually need. It's like offering someone a life raft, but only if they can already swim. So tell me, how does a state that barely has a black population still manage to make homeownership so difficult for the few who are there? Nebraska, we're looking at you. Hold up. If you're finding this eye-opening or just downright frustrating, take a second to hit that like button, because the more people know about these housing barriers, the harder it becomes to ignore them. And while you're at it, drop a comment below. Have you or someone you know faced challenges trying to buy a home? Let's talk about it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a deep dive like this. Alright, let's get back into it. Number 5. South Dakota. Alright, let's be real. When's the last time you met a black person who said, "I'm moving to South Dakota"? Exactly. And if they did, they probably reconsidered real quick after trying to buy a home. Getting a mortgage in South Dakota while black is about as easy as winning the lottery, twice. Let's start with mortgage denials. If you're black and applying for a home loan in South Dakota, banks are twice as likely to stamp "denied" on your application compared to white applicants. Why? Great question. Your credit score could be solid, your income stable, but for some reason, lenders suddenly get selective when they see a black applicant. And if by some miracle you do get a home, prepare for the property tax scam. Black homeowners in South Dakota get hit with two realities at once. 1. Your home is undervalued when you try to refinance, meaning you can't build equity like white homeowners do. 2. But when it's time to pay property taxes, suddenly your house is valued higher because, black homeowners just love paying extra for no reason. Now let's talk about building wealth, or rather, how hard South Dakota makes it. With almost no black businesses, fewer job opportunities, and a financial system that doesn't cater to black buyers, trying to gain financial mobility here is like running on a treadmill that's on fire while wearing ankle weights. So tell me, if homeownership is supposed to be the foundation of the American dream, why does South Dakota keep pulling the rug out from under black buyers? Number 4. North Dakota, less than 10%. That's the black homeownership rate in North Dakota, the lowest in the entire country. At this point, you have a better chance of finding a palm tree in Fargo than a black homeowner. Now, let's break this down. You ever walk into a store and immediately feel like you don't belong? That's North Dakota, but for black people trying to buy a house. With so few black residents, the entire housing system here wasn't built with black buyers in mind. There's no strong network of black real estate agents, no culturally specific homebuyer assistance programs, and barely any black-owned financial institutions. It's like trying to order soul food at a gas station. Just not set up for you. And if you're a black professional relocating for work, good luck finding a welcoming neighborhood. Many black transplants face workforce discrimination that spills right into housing, because let's be real, if you're already dealing with racial bias on the job, you think the mortgage lenders are any different? Oh, and let's not forget the housing shortage for minorities. With so few black people in North Dakota, there's no real push to create affordable housing or lending programs tailored to minority buyers. The state's real estate market operates like black home buyers don't exist, and judging by that 10% homeownership rate, it's working. So tell me, if the American dream includes homeownership, what exactly are black buyers supposed to do in North Dakota? Rent forever. Number 3. Iowa. Iowa loves to call itself the fields of opportunities, but if you're black and trying to buy a home here, it's more like fields of frustration. Because let's be real, a 23% black homeownership rate in a state where the national average is nearly double that? That's not just bad, that's embarrassing. So what's going on? Well, let's start with lending discrimination. If you're a black homebuyer in Des Moines, your mortgage application is almost twice as likely to be denied compared to a white applicant. Twice. Imagine walking into a bank armed with a solid credit score, stable job, and a down payment, only to be treated like you just asked for a free mansion. And even if you somehow make it past the mortgage blockade, who's there to help you navigate the process? Iowa's black population is small, which means there aren't many black realtors, loan officers, or homebuyer assistance programs designed with black buyers in mind. It's like walking into a barbershop for a fade and realizing, uh-oh, no one in there knows how to use clippers. And don't even get me started on real estate resources. Many of the state's first-time homebuyer programs are generic at best and don't address the specific financial and historical barriers black buyers face. It's like handing out the same map to everyone, even though half the group is already stuck in a maze. So Iowa, riddle me this. If homeownership is one of the biggest wealth-building tools in America, why is it still a luxury black residents can't afford? Number 2. Minnesota. Minnesota, explain yourself. How does a state that prides itself on Minnesota nice also hold the worst black-white homeownership gap in the entire country? Yep, you heard that right. Only 25% of black residents own homes here, compared to 77% of white residents. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. So what's the deal? Well, let's start with history refusing to stay in the past. Ever heard of racial covenants? Back in the day, real estate deeds in Minneapolis literally had clauses banning black people from buying homes in certain neighborhoods. They aren't legal anymore, but the damage was already done. Generations of black Minnesotans were locked out of homeownership, and that legacy is still wrecking wealth-building opportunities today. Now, let's talk about homebuyer assistance, or lack thereof. Minnesota loves to advertise its down payment assistance programs, but guess what? Many black applicants don't even qualify. Between rigid income requirements and outdated credit score expectations, these programs are basically saying, help is available, just not for you. And the worst part? Black buyers in Minneapolis still get their home values appraised lower than white homeowners with identical properties. You could buy a house, remodel it, add granite countertops, and install a golden toilet, and the bank would still be like, let's knock a few thousand off, just because. So Minnesota, how do you have world-class hospitals, award-winning schools, and a booming economy, but when it comes to black homeownership, you're stuck in the Stone Age? Number 1. Wisconsin. Alright, Wisconsin. You had one job. You're known for cheese, the Green Bay Packers, and apparently making it nearly impossible for black people to buy a home. Congratulations, Wisconsin. You officially hold the title for the worst state for black homeownership in the U.S. Milwaukee has one of the most shameful homeownership gaps in the entire country. The numbers? Black homeownership sits at just 27%, while white homeownership is a comfortable 68%. That's not just a gap, that's a real estate Grand Canyon. How do you explain that, Wisconsin? Did black people suddenly forget how to apply for mortgages? Or is the system, designed to work against them? Oh, but wait, it gets worse. The ghosts of redlining are still running the show. Back in the 1930s, Milwaukee's real estate maps literally boxed black residents out of desirable neighborhoods and pushed them into underdeveloped areas with no financial investment. Fast forward to today, and surprise, those same neighborhoods still suffer from lower home values, fewer banking services, and little access to wealth-building opportunities. It's almost like, these policies were never really undone. And let's talk about getting a mortgage in Wisconsin while black. If you're black and applying for a home loan here, you are 2.3 times more likely to be denied than a white applicant, even when you have the same credit score. That's right, you could have perfect credit, a stable income, and money in the bank, and they'll still find a reason to say no. Meanwhile, Chad from the suburbs with a barely there credit score and an entrepreneurial job selling Pokemon cards on eBay somehow walks out with the keys to a 3-bedroom home. Make it make sense. And before you say, well, maybe it's just Milwaukee, think again. This issue isn't just in the city, it's statewide. Wisconsin consistently ranks at the bottom for black economic mobility, generational wealth, and homeownership opportunities. So, Wisconsin, how does a state that can make world-class cheese still serve black homebuyers this level of nonsense? Now here's the real question. What can be done about it? The first step is awareness, and that's why we made this video. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Check out the videos on the end screen to see more eye-opening content from Virtual Travel by Brian. Have you or someone you know faced homeownership challenges? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because we've got plenty more truth bombs coming your way.